Flight attendant slaps billionaire's son, not knowing his father is watching from first class. The cabin was calm until a sharp sound shattered the silence. A flight attendant, red-faced and furious, had just slapped a teenage boy in row 17, calling him a liar, a brat, and a troublemaker. Passengers gasped. But what no one knew was that a man in first class, dressed in a simple black hoodie and watching everything unfold, was not just any passenger. He was the boy's father, and he owned the airline. The cabin air was crisp and quiet, the soft hum of the engines barely audible over the subtle clinking of glasses in first class. Everyone was settled in, from the business travelers immersed in their tablets to the elderly couple quietly holding hands in row 17B. In that row, 16-year-old Malik Hayes sat by the window, scrolling through his phone. He wore a plain navy hoodie and dark jeans. Nothing about him screamed wealth or privilege. His eyes, however, carried a calm maturity beyond his years. Suddenly, a tray table rattled. A middle-aged flight attendant named Gloria leaned over, clearly irritated. Her lips were pressed tight, her posture rigid. She had seen Malik earlier, but something about him annoyed her. Maybe it was the quiet confidence in his eyes. Maybe it was how calmly he asked for sparkling water, or how politely he declined peanuts because of an allergy. She did not know who he was, and she did not care. "Are you supposed to be sitting here?" she snapped. Malik looked up, confused. "Yes, ma'am, this is my seat." Her eyes narrowed. "I've been working flights for 22 years. I know when someone is sneaking into a seat they didn't pay for. Let me see your boarding pass." Malik reached into his pocket calmly and handed it over. She snatched it, her eyes scanning the paper quickly, then freezing. Row 17B, Economy Plus. His name was clearly printed. "Where did you get this ticket?" she asked, her voice louder now. "My father booked it," Malik replied. That set her off. "Oh, right. Let me guess. Your daddy is a king? Or a rapper? Or maybe the president?" She mocked, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. Some glanced over, unsure if they should say something. Others stayed silent. Malik's ears turned red, but he did not respond. He simply looked at her, silently. Gloria leaned in, eyes burning. "You kids think you can just act like you own the world. But not on my flight." Then, without warning, she slapped the phone out of his hand. The plastic cracked against the aisle. Gasps echoed across the cabin. A mother in row 18 covered her mouth. A man in row 16 stood halfway, unsure whether to step in. Gloria stood tall, arms crossed. "Let that be a lesson," she said coldly. But she had no idea what she had just done. Behind the frosted divider, a man slowly removed his noise-canceling headphones. He had heard every word. His jaw tightened as he placed the headphones beside his untouched orange juice. Wearing a black hoodie, sunglasses, and no flashy jewelry, he looked like any other businessman. But he was not. He was Darius Hayes, one of the richest black entrepreneurs in the United States. And Malik was his only son. In that moment, Darius stood up, but no one saw him coming. And what happened next would shock the entire plane. Darius did not move quickly. He moved with purpose. Every step down the aisle was silent, controlled, deliberate. No one recognized him. Not in his plain hoodie, not without the tailored suit or bodyguards. But his presence carried weight, like thunder rumbling in the distance just before a storm. Passengers shifted in their seats, unsure of what was happening. Some whispered. Others craned their necks. Gloria, the flight attendant, had turned her back to Malik and was angrily scribbling a note on her incident report pad. She had no clue who was now standing a few feet behind her, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. Malik looked up and saw his father. Their eyes met for only a second. Malik did not say a word. He did not need to. Darius gave a slight nod, the kind that said everything. "Stay calm. I am here now." Gloria spun around, ready to bark another command. She stopped cold when she saw him. "Sir, I'm going to need you to return to your seat," she said sharply, before even asking who he was. Darius's voice was low but unshakable. "I will not be sitting down." There was something in his tone that made even nearby passengers straighten up. Gloria tried again. "Sir, I don't care if you're first class or economy. Right now you're in violation of FAA regulations. And if you don't return to your seat, I will have security meet you at the gate. Darius stepped forward, calmly placing a hand on the back of Malik's seat. You slapped my son. Gloria blinked. Excuse me? He repeated it. You slapped my son. Passengers around them froze. Gloria's voice cracked for the first time. He was being disrespectful. I gave him a warning. He refused to follow instructions. Did he raise his voice at you? No. Did he threaten you? No. Did he refuse to show you his boarding pass? Silence. I'll ask again, Darius said, his voice still calm. Did he refuse to show you his boarding pass? Gloria swallowed hard. No. But you slapped him. I have a right to maintain order in the cabin. Darius stared at her. You embarrassed him. You called him a liar. You mocked his father. Then you struck him. Gloria glanced around, realizing all eyes were now on her. Even the other flight attendants had stepped back, uncertain how to react. Then Darius pulled out his phone and pressed one button. It dialed automatically. A voice on the other end answered. Captain Reynolds speaking. It's Darius Hayes, he said. I need you to come to row 17. Now. The voice replied immediately. Yes, sir. Gloria's mouth fell open. She took a step back. You're... him. Darius did not respond. He simply looked at her, the way a judge might look at someone before delivering a verdict. Moments later, the cockpit door opened. A tall man in uniform walked down the aisle quickly. It was the pilot himself. He did not hesitate. Mr. Hayes, is everything all right? No, Darius replied. This woman just physically assaulted my son. On my airline. Gasps rippled across the cabin. Gloria's knees seemed to weaken. My airline, one passenger whispered to another. What does he mean by that? But no one was ready for what came next. Because Darius Hayes did not just own a seat on that plane, he owned the entire airline. And now the entire flight crew was about to learn who they were really working for. A hush fell over the cabin as the truth began to sink in. Whispers flowed like electricity down the aisles. Passengers turned to one another, confused, stunned, trying to piece together what they had just heard. He said it's his airline. Wait, Darius Hayes? The tech billionaire? Gloria's eyes darted from the captain to Darius, then to the flight attendants standing behind her, who now looked like they were trying to become invisible. Mr. Hayes, the captain said carefully, we had no idea you were on board. I apologize on behalf of the entire crew. Darius did not blink. Apologies will not undo what just happened. I gave no special instruction to be treated differently. That was intentional. I boarded this flight to see how everyday people are treated when they have no status, no visible wealth. I did not expect a test. I expected professionalism. What I witnessed was humiliation. You had one job, protect passengers. Instead, you targeted one. Gloria opened her mouth. No words came out. Was there anything about my son, Darius continued, that made you believe he was dangerous? No, Gloria finally whispered. Then what was it? He asked. She looked down ashamed, but not enough. He didn't belong in first class, she said. That's what I assumed. A kid alone with no parents in sight. I didn't know. Darius tilted his head slightly. You didn't know, so you slapped him. The words slapped echoed in her ears like a hammer. Malik sat frozen in his seat, his hands clenched in his lap, silent but wide-eyed. This was no longer just about him. It was something bigger. It was about every person who had ever been judged, doubted, or humiliated because of how they looked or where they sat. Darius's voice turned calm. Too calm. Captain, I'm officially requesting this flight be documented in full. I want reports filed. I want body cam footage from the terminal reviewed. I want passenger testimonials collected. This is not going to be brushed under the carpet. Yes, sir, the captain replied. Consider it done. And her, Darius asked, nodding toward Gloria. The captain hesitated. Gloria stepped back, her voice shaking. Mr. Hayes, I've worked for this airline for 11 years. 11 years, Darius repeated. And not once did you stop to ask him a question. Not once did you speak with respect. You saw a young black man in first class and assumed he didn't belong. That's not poor judgment. That's embedded bias. And in my company, that is not tolerated. Gloria began to tremble. Please, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Darius gave her the kind of look that could silence a courtroom. You did. The pilot stepped forward. Mr. Hayes, what would you like me to do? Darius stared at Gloria. Remove her from this flight, immediately. Gasps spread across the cabin again. A few passengers clapped quietly. One woman said under her breath, It's about time. Gloria's face drained of color. You can't be serious. You're being removed for assaulting a passenger and violating airline conduct, the captain said, his voice firm. Now gather your belongings. Two flight attendants approached her, no longer her colleagues, now her escorts. As she walked down the aisle toward the back exit, heads turned, whispers followed, and eyes that once avoided hers now watched in full awareness. Malik watched her go. For the first time, he felt seen, not for being a billionaire's son, but for the fact that someone finally stood up when it mattered. Darius leaned down beside him and spoke softly, just loud enough for him to hear. Justice, he said, is not about revenge. It's about making sure the next boy doesn't go through the same thing. Malik nodded. The sting on his cheek was still fresh, but now overshadowed by something far stronger, pride. And just as the door closed behind Gloria, a new twist was about to land, because someone else had been watching the entire time, and that person had not said a word yet. The moment the door closed behind Gloria, the entire cabin felt like it had taken a collective breath. The tension in the air was thick, but no one dared to speak. It was as if the flight itself had paused in time, hanging in suspense, waiting for what would come next. Malik glanced at his father. Darius's eyes were steady, locked onto the seat in front of him, but his mind was clearly racing. He had just dismantled an entire system of prejudices with nothing more than his presence. But Darius was not finished. Not yet. Malik, Darius said softly, his voice a calm ripple through the tense air. It's not just about righting one wrong. It's about ensuring this doesn't happen again. To anyone. Malik nodded, but there was a fire burning in his chest. He had felt the sting of the slap, the humiliation. But what he felt most deeply was the weight of his father's words. This was about much more than the flight. It was about the world, about the way people were treated before they even had the chance to speak. Dad, Malik said, his voice quiet but firm, do you think things will change? Do you think this will make any difference? Darius leaned back in his seat, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the armrest. Change never comes easily, son. But it starts with a single action, a single voice, a single refusal to allow the cycle to continue. The cabin began to settle. Passengers now turned their attention back to the flight attendants, who had returned to their stations, their faces still slightly flushed from the earlier confrontation. No one dared to question Darius's authority. Not even the crew. They had seen firsthand the power that a man like him wielded. As the flight continued its journey, Malik could feel the weight of what had happened slowly shift. He had been a part of something larger, something that would echo far beyond this flight. The injustice he had faced, the injustice so many had faced before him, could not be erased by a single action. But it could be exposed, and once exposed, it had no place to hide. But as the plane soared higher and the world below grew smaller, another layer of the story was about to unfold. Someone in the back of the plane had been watching the entire exchange. Someone who had been observing, quietly, carefully, from the shadows. As the flight began its descent, the captain's voice echoed through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for landing. Please fasten your seat belts and return to your seats. But there was something else. A soft chime. The sound of a message being sent. Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. His heart skipped a beat as he reached for it, his fingers trembling slightly as he unlocked the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. No name. Just a series of words that sent a chill through him. It's not over. Malik's gaze shot to his father, who had already seen the message. Darius's eyes hardened as he took a slow breath. He knew what was coming. The message had been sent by someone close to the situation. Someone who had seen everything unfold. Someone who had the power to change everything. But what did the message mean? What was this final twist, this final revelation that would alter the course of everything? Malik's mind raced. He had been through so much in the last few hours, from the shock of being humiliated in front of strangers to the overwhelming sense of empowerment that had come with his father's intervention. But now a new question loomed large. Who was behind this cryptic message, and what was it they intended to do? "Dad," Malik whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the plane's engines. "What does this mean?" Darius looked at his son, his expression unreadable. "It means we're about to face a new challenge, but we face it together." The message was just the beginning. The end was yet to come. And with it, the most unexpected revelation of all. As the whispers grew louder in the cabin, several passengers began pulling out their phones, curious about what was unfolding. None of them had the slightest idea that the man in the tailored Navy suit calmly rising from seat 1A was Victor Langford, one of the most powerful and influential figures in the aviation and tech industries. His name was rarely seen in the media because he preferred to work in silence, far from public attention. But when he stood up, the air around him changed. The murmurs faded. Even the flight attendants, who had been laughing just seconds ago, now froze, sensing something had shifted. Victor walked down the aisle with slow, deliberate steps. Passengers moved aside instinctively. Some began to record. No one blinked. No one breathed. He stopped right behind the flight attendant who had slapped his son. Her name tag read Gloria. She still had her back to him, scolding Malik again, as if nothing had happened. "You think you're special just because you got some expensive sneakers on? Sit down and stay quiet. You're lucky I even let you speak to me." The moment her sentence ended, she heard a voice behind her. Low, calm, powerful. "That is my son." Gloria's face turned pale, as if the color had drained from her soul. She turned around slowly, and her eyes met Victor's. At first, she did not recognize him, but then her eyes scanned the expensive watch on his wrist, the way he carried himself, and the way other passengers now looked at him with quiet reverence. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know." Victor raised one hand, not to hit, not to yell, just to silence. "You didn't know he was my son, so you thought it was acceptable to embarrass him? To put your hands on him? To treat him like nothing?" Gloria could not speak. She shook her head, tears threatening to fall, her mouth trying to form an apology, but no sound came. "You judged him by his skin. You judged him by what he wore, not knowing that every thread on his clothes came from my own company, that the technology powering this very aircraft is a product of my design." A gasp rolled through the cabin. Someone whispered, "That's Victor Langford." Gloria backed up, her knees trembling. Victor then looked down at Malik, who had not moved. He was frozen, overwhelmed, trying to stay composed in front of the strangers surrounding him. Victor crouched slightly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did nothing wrong, son." Then Victor stood and turned back to Gloria. "You owe him an apology, not because I'm standing here, but because you forgot his humanity." The entire aircraft was silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the engines. Gloria, now sobbing, whispered, "I'm so sorry." Victor did not smile. He did not nod. He turned back and walked toward first class, leaving Gloria standing there, broken. But what happened next would be talked about for years, because Victor was not finished, and neither was the world watching this unfold from the ground. Gloria stood frozen, her hands trembling, her mind replaying every cruel word she had thrown at Malik. She wanted to disappear, but the moment for hiding had passed. She had been exposed, not by a loud confrontation or a dramatic scene, but by truth, and the truth had shaken everyone on board. Victor sat back down in first class. He did not say another word. He did not need to. Within minutes, a quiet buzz went through the cabin. An executive from the airline, who had been traveling anonymously, stepped forward. She had received the viral clip passengers had already posted. News was spreading like wildfire. The video of Gloria striking Malik had reached thousands within minutes, then hundreds of thousands. The comments flooded in. "Fire her. This is unacceptable. Protect that young man." The executive approached Victor humbly. "Mr. Langford, I am deeply sorry. This should never have happened. We're taking action immediately." Victor simply looked at her and said, "The apology is not mine to receive." She nodded, understanding. Gloria was immediately relieved of duty, but even that was not the end. Because what happened next made headlines across every major network in the country. Victor did something no one expected. The next day, during a press conference held outside his company's headquarters, Victor walked up to the podium with Malik standing beside him. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned in, expecting anger, lawsuits, scandal. But Victor gave them something else. He told the story, not as a billionaire demanding revenge, but as a father who had to watch his son be humiliated in public. He spoke about how unconscious bias, disrespect, and prejudice still existed, even in places that claimed to value professionalism. He did not name Gloria to shame her. He spoke only of what needed to change, not just in airlines, but in the world. And then he made the announcement that shook the entire industry. Victor revealed he would be launching a new scholarship program in Malik's name, a nationwide fund aimed at training, hiring, and empowering underrepresented youth to become pilots, flight attendants, engineers, and aviation leaders. A $100 million pledge, not out of anger, out of purpose. Because what was taken from Malik that day, his dignity, would now become the foundation for thousands to rise. Malik smiled for the first time since the incident. He looked into the cameras, held his father's hand, and said, "If they tried to silence me, I'll make sure others have the power to speak." And in that moment, the world listened. From humiliation at 30,000 feet to global transformation, this was not just a viral story. It was a movement, a reminder that sometimes the ones the world dismisses are the very ones who rise up and change it. And it all started with one slap. That met the wrong son with the right father watching.